not taking that loan and putting it in Wall Street, the money can vanish. You're going to have security behind it. You're going to have if I lend, I'm always in first secured position. So worst case scenario, deal goes south. I still got the property. Now, yes, will it be a pain in the ass? I've never had one go that far south. I've had deals where the person stopped paying and I've had to, kind of have attorneys send letters, but I've always gotten my money back. So I guess, Jim, what's your alternative? Let me ask you that. So I understand your point. What else is your alternative? What are you going to do? You could do nothing. You can just leave the money in your house in the rafters, sleep good at night, not have any liabilities, not have anything to worry about, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, that's an alternative. I mean, hey, to each their own. But other than that, I mean, where are you going to put money to make it work right now? I don't think Wall Street's a good place for you to look. There's just not a lot of good options right now. Being the bank is the ultimate at this present point. I don't even think at this present point. I think always. What's going on, everybody? We are live for the Wealth Webinar Series yet again. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined by Mr. HELOC, or HELOC Joe, as some like to call him, and also, as always, Mr. Snaggy. What's up, Snaggy?
Hey, good day.
Is it still raining out there in Florida?
It's still raining. It's bizarre, but it's wintertime. Christmas is coming.
It's raining here, so it's got to rain somewhere. That's how I look at it.
It's got a nice delivery of silver. This thing's heavy.
Whoa, look at that thing. You going to flash it, or are you just going to show just the paper?
I didn't open it yet. It just came. Go ahead. We'll do it a little bit.
All right. Well, hey, folks, today we're going to talk about HELOCs, HELAs, and how you can get that lazy money off your darn couch. And that lazy money that we're talking about is the equity in your house. Real quick, by a show of hands, how many of you have equity in your house right now? Put I in the chat. Now, all of you that said you have equity in your house, how many of you are actually making that lazy money go to work for you right now? Put in lazy. All right. That's a good number of people. I try. Oh, Rod, you tried. All right. Remember that name, Rod. We got to come back to Rod. Not yet. All right. So we've got some people that have identified they have equity in their house. Other people have identified the equity, tapped into the equity, and sent the equity out to work for them, which is great, right? We can make a decision in life, and that decision is either money. You can go out and work for money. We've all done that for our whole lives. Joe did that on the railroad for how many years? Stephen did that in Wall Street and lots of other jobs. I did that in pizza shops and restaurants and all sorts of stuff. But we traded hours for dollars, and that was all we knew. And you know what? That's what most people know. People throughout your life are going to tell you that that's the only way to trade hours for dollars. I guarantee you, my daughter, who is 2.5 years old, as she gets older, people are going to tell her she's got to go to work. She's got to trade hours for dollars. Some of us have evolved to that point where we realize we've worked for dollars, and we've accumulated some of those by applying some of the laws of wealth. But now we have learned how to make our money go to work for us. So that's exactly what we got to identify today. Those of you that have equity, have tapped into your equity. We're going to talk about a couple different ways you can do that. But then we got to send that equity out to work. And there's lots of ways to do that. One way I would suggest not doing that right now is Wall Street. Because if you got equity in your house, the fastest way to have it disappear is do one of two things. Do nothing. And I can guarantee you over the next year, year and a half, that money will dissipate. I was just mentioning San Francisco. San Francisco is a beautiful part of the country. Some downsides about it, but I was reading an article and it showed the fastest declining real estate prices in the country. Number one was San Francisco, double digits. I think it was like 18% decline in real estate values. So I want you to parlay that over to what we're talking about here. You have equity in your house, that money sitting lazy on your couch. That money will deflate. It will disappear. It's already happening in tons of different states, but leading the pack is San Francisco. Utah was up there too. I noticed some people from Utah. Chicago was up there in the top 10. But anyway, you get the drift. Real estate prices are softening. Real estate prices are going down. Now, if you're talking to your realtor buddies or your realtor friends, they're going to tell you just the opposite. You know why? Because they make money selling real estate. Do you think they want you to think real estate prices are going down? Absolutely not. I was at a Christmas party this weekend with my wife, talking to our realtor, a good friend of ours. And I asked her, it was kind of a cheating kind of question. I said, so what do you think is going to happen with real estate? You think the pricing is going to go down? Oh, no. There's so much demand. People are way overpaying still. We just sold a house, 50,000 over ask. And I felt like saying to her, who was the dumbass that paid 50 over ask? Can you give me their name and number so I can send them like a letter just telling them how dumb that was? But anyway, you get the drift. Real estate's a lagging indicator, which means we don't see prices softening fast. We see the stock market fall, and then real estate 6 to 8 months later goes down. So number one, fastest way to watch the equity disappear is do nothing. Second fastest way to watch your equity in your house disappear is get the home equity line or the HELOC loan that Joe's going to teach you about. Take that money and put it all into the stock market. Very quickly, it will disappear. You want it to go faster? Well, maybe not now, but if you wanted it to go faster previously, you could have put it all into FTX or FT. What is it? FT, what was their token? FTT, or any of those tokens for that matter. It doesn't matter which one. If you wanted to like watch money dissipate and disappear over the course of a month, like just put it in one of those tokens. Poof, gone. It's like, wow, where did it go? That was a cool trick. You know a thing or two about that. But what I was thinking about doing is just diving in, because we don't want either one of those to happen. We don't want you to not do anything and watch the value of your equity decrease because you didn't take action. And also, when you do take that equity and get access to it through what Joe's going to teach, we want you to send that money to work in a very smart way, a very safe way, in a way where you could actually protect and secure that money, which clearly is not crypto. No pun intended. So
many people don't understand the difference between an asset and a liability with their house. They think that because they have a house, it's an asset. That's not necessarily true. An asset is something that will give you money, or you can make an investment on it. A house is a liability if you have a mortgage on it and you just keep on paying on it. So what is a HELOC? A HELOC is a home equity line of credit. That means that the bank will actually give you money in an account, which is a line, and using your house as collateral, they'll use the equity in that and put it in a nice little account for you to use at your discretion. And you only pay interest on the money that you're actually using. So that's always a good thing too. So if you don't use it, you're not paying on it. The bank is the one that's using the house as collateral. So that money that is actually in the account is not your money. It's actually bank money. They're just putting it in an account for you to use. And now that you're using other people's money, which is the bank's money, any interest that you would invest it in on top of what you're paying would just be extra money, which would be the spread, and that would be arbitrage. But we'll get into that a little bit more. There's two things that Chris was talking about, and that's the HELOC versus the home equity loan. So the HELOC we discussed, and that's the line of credit. That means that you only pay interest on the money that you're using, and the bank would put it into the account. Home equity loan is more or less the same thing like your mortgage. They use the equity that you have left over, and you will have a loan that would be the entire loan amount. So if you had $50,000 in equity, they would actually give you the $50,000 all at once. It's not a line. It's just like your mortgage. And then you would pay a monthly payment on it back to the bank. So that is also on a monthly basis. So you don't have a line of that. It's just all at once. The difference between a HELOC and a home equity loan is like at $100,000 for that. If you were to have a loan at $100,000, say at 3%, and you did not pay any extra into the principal, and you just paid the monthly fee, the payment would be like $420 a month for say 30 years. But because you think of the number of 3%, do you know really how much you're going to pay back in total interest over that 30 years if you merely just pay what they want? Over $51,000 on a $100,000 line. 3% on $100,000 at 30 years seems to be more like 50% to me if I'm paying $51,000 back in interest. But that's how the banks make money, because with a mortgage or with a loan, the bank is still in control. And what does Chris and Stephen always teach? Become your own bank and be in control of your own money. So with a line of credit, you have a little bit more to say and have more control over that. Simple interest is with the HELOC, And the loan and your mortgage is all amortization. So that's scheduled payments instead of just being simple interest of using what you're using as you use it. The interest rates that would be in simple interest. So if you have a HELOC, say for $100,000 and you don't use it, you're not going to pay interest on it until you use it. So say we lend out that $100,000 or put it through our policy first, and then we're going to lend it out. That interest that borrower is giving back to us, say 12%, just for simple numbers, would be $1,000 a month. And the simple interest on the HELOC, let's call it 6%, and that would be $500 per month. So you're technically not really paying that 5%. The borrower is paying that 5% or 6% for the simple interest of the HELOC. So what's left over in your hand after you get done paying the interest? Another $500.
Spread.
That's the spread. That would be the arbitrage, the spread. And then what do we do with that? Well, we could take that 500, we could put it back into the HELOC and acquire more money so that we can lend it out. If we're on a monthly basis with the insurance company, we can put it back into the policy and fill that up for when we get more money to lend back out. We can just take it and we can go to dinner with it. Let's be honest, we can pay a car loan on it. We can go to dinner on it. We can put it into our policy and we can put it into a HELOC. You can do anything you want with it. What's the best thing to do? And that depends on each person and what they're exactly what's going to happen with what they're going to do next with it. People call me up and discuss about, okay, well, if I have this HELOC and I want to put it into the policy, what's the best way to do it and why should I or why shouldn't I? 9 out of 10 times it's strictly on a one-to-one basis with their numbers and how we're going to utilize what they're going to do next with it. But shooting from the hip, if you have money in a HELOC and you are going to lend it out to a borrower, you might as well run it through the policy first, because who wouldn't want to make money on their money twice? So then once it gets lent from the HELOC into the policy, we'll borrow it out of the policy. And Chris and Steven talk about, lending from an LLC, not only for protection, but there could be some tax advantages to that depending on how you do it with your accountant.
One thing I got to ask you though is why did you use 6% here?
I use 6% simple interest because that's what the HELOCs are running right about now.
Okay. So this loan, this interest rate's not what the insurance policy charges you.
No.
This is what the HELOC charges. So
Correct.
we're doing a 6% HELOC. Does anyone right now have a HELOC that's 6% in the chat? Let me know what your interest rate is on your HELOC that you've got right now.
So yeah, so the HELOC is at 6% for this diagram. And then when you run it through the policy, then we'll make money on the spread through the policy, between the dividends, the guarantee, and what we're going to borrow it at from the insurance company. So then when we bring that back to our segregated account, then we can lend it to our LLC at whatever interest rate you think that you might be able to get at that time. I think you lend it what?
I do 6%.
6%.
So my standard number that I would lend to my LLC. So from my policy to my LLC, I always charge 6.
All right.
I mean, I might increase it though, because now that rates are going up, I mean, hey, listen, if the banks are charging more, why shouldn't I charge more?
Makes sense.
But my current notes are all 6%.
So then after it goes to the LLC, now we can lend it out to our borrower. And then our borrower would in turn give us interest on a monthly basis. So let's say that interest is 12% there, and we're using 100,000 as a
$100,000 loan.
Yep, as a good example.
That's $1,000 a month.
Yep, be $1,000 a month coming back into the LLC.
And this would be $600.
Yeah, 5 because it's 6%. Right?
Oh shoot, sorry.
That's okay. So then once it came back, full circle, come back around, the $1,000 would be going back into the HELOC. $500 of that 1,000 would be paying the bank back for utilizing that 100,000, and then you still have $500 left in your hand. So after the borrower pays the interest, you're still left with 6% in your hand. The $500, you wouldn't be able to have that extra $500 to pay your car payment or save up for more money to invest if it wasn't for the bank using your house as equity, giving you money to use and utilize just because of the equity in your house. Not one penny came from your pocket. Not one penny. So if you look at all these interest rates going around from 6 and then 2 and then 5 to 6 and borrowing at 6 and then probably lending back to 10 and $1,000 and 12%, that's kind of crazy, isn't it?
People's heads are spinning when you just used all those numbers.
But how about we just say one thing? It never was your money to begin with. It was bank money. So your interest rate is infinite. That is the key word to this whole little diagram. All those numbers and all those dollars and all those cents, you're making money from the bank, putting money into an account for you to use, and the borrower's paying that interest to the bank, leaving you with 6% or $500 left in your hand. That's called infinite.
You know, a lot of people are looking at this chart, Joe, and, you know, they're like, oh my God, that's confusing, but let's just dissect it.
Okay.
Forget about what the policy pays you for right now. Let's keep this simple. All right. Let's just, even though we know that whatever money we put into, so we used 100 grand, whatever money we put into the policy, that money never leaves the policy if structured right. So when we take the money out of the policy, we're actually using our death benefit. We're not using the money that we put in. So therefore our money continues to earn 5 to 6, but let's just skip that. So we know that the HELOC is going to charge you 6, and some people came in, said they were lower than 6, some people higher. Again, we can run the numbers. And my suggestion is, you know, some of you are like, well, that 6% doesn't do it for me. Mine's 7. Great. So change the number to 7. And then if you change the number there to 7, charge your entity more. And then that's it. And heck, over here, instead of charging 12, charge 13. Listen, if everything's going up, all boats go up. You can increase it, but let's just keep this simple and just pretend that this is we're going to keep this at 12. Sorry to mess up the drawing there. So if this was 6%, okay, and you were charging 6 or 7, doesn't matter, you know, just 6 or 7. I'm getting sloppy here. That's a wash, right? So if the HELOC charges you 6 and you charge your entity 6, that's a wash right there. Okay. Then you charge 12 over here and you pay back $1,000. Again, just track the dollar. We got 500 here as the cost, but this 500, one of two ways you could say, all right, your company, your entity is going to pay this 500 and that 500 are the same dollars. So your 6% that you're charging your entity is paid out of the money that your entity's earning from the loan at 12 or 13 or 15 or whatever the heck you charge in private money club. It's up to you. So again, that's found money. That is literally infinite return because that money wasn't yours to begin. That money was the equity sitting lazy in your house right here. You just decided to change where that money went first. And then from there, you took the loan from that policy. And the loan that you're going to be able to take, it might not be the full 100 in the first year if you just started the policy. We're just keeping this really simple. So for full disclosure and transparency, I just want everybody to know if you took 100 from your HELOC and you put it into your policy, and then you wanted to take 100 out, you would not be able to immediately in your policy. Probably be like between 80 and 90,000, depending on the plan design. So we're just keeping it simple. I just want you to all understand that. But when you take the loan from the policy is going to charge you interest. But what Joe did is he just assumed that if you're making 5 to 6 and the insurance company is charging you 5, like you're making a spread or a wash. And there's very few interest. The insurance companies that were earning like 5 to 5.2, and they all maintain dividends. That's the good news. Most of them are charging 4 to 5% on the loan interest. Okay, so you've got yourself a positive spread here. Okay, but all he did is he just said, forget about this. We're not even going to factor that. We just know that the HELOC is going to charge 6%. So if the HELOC charges 6, then you know it would make sense just to keep math simple for you to charge your entity 6. Because if you went direct from the HELOC and you lent that money to your entity, what would be your cost? 6. Everybody's following that, right? So whether you borrowed the money from your HELOC and lent it to your LLC, or you put the money in your policy and lent it to your LLC, it's kind of one and the same, correct? But what we've done now is we've now created ourselves a note which allows your entity to then write off this interest. Depending on your CPA, and I'm not a tax advisor, so check with your CPA or tax professional, but usually if done properly, the HELOC interest could potentially be a write-off as well to you personally. But again, I don't want to get into the tax space.
The two constants in this would be the 6% in the HELOC and the 12% that the borrower is giving you. The variables is just running it through the policy. We know we're going to make money. So that number really isn't really even a factor. And lending it to the LLC just for a write-off, that number really isn't even a factor. The key is, and like you said, if somebody has a 7% or an 8% interest rate, they are still making 12% from the borrower with money that didn't come out of their pocket, that the bank gave them in an account using their house, and they're still making 4 or 3% on lazy cash.
Folks, are any of you making 3 or 4% on your bank account? Anyone making 3 or 4%? And do you think you can get the bank to promise you to continue paying that for at least 12 months? Do you think they'll give you a contract saying they're going to continue to pay you 3 or 4% for the next 12 months? Chances are no one on here is getting that. Maybe 1 or 2 are getting 3%. Here we go. Philip. I remember Philip from last week. 3.85 high yield savings at UFB. Okay, so, but Philip, can you call UFB and ask them to guarantee that for 12 months? Probably not. So, you know, that's the highest you're going to get. So no matter what, making this spread. So if this was Philip, Philip would have to look at this and say, okay, if I'm making 3.85% on my savings, we got another element that we could play with that one, because we could use that 3.85 right here. So now Philip would have the ability to pick up an additional 3.85 as long as that company continued to pay him that, because now the money that goes in here, he could basically leave it in there for a little bit, let it earn 3.5, and then get it over here to the HELOC. But how I would do that if I was him is I would just charge my company more, have my company pay the majority of the money back over here. So there's different ways to stuff this thing.
And the write-off would be on the other side.
I think what you said, Joe, to not make this complicated, folks, this money that you're earning here, this 12% is being earned on money you weren't making a penny on before. It was sitting lazy in your rafters of your house.
Exactly.
All this is doing is showing you how to get that lazy money out to work. And also, this, we're just looking at it from the surface, right? You've all seen that diagram of the iceberg. You know, what you see on the top is not what the whole iceberg is. Watch the Titanic. Underneath the water, that thing's huge. So we're just looking at the top part of the iceberg, because underneath the water is this, which we haven't even addressed here. The fact that you've got $100 grand that went into the policy that will continue to earn uninterrupted compound interest for the rest of your life, no matter what happens. You're going to make that on that money for the rest of your life. And then this, you know, I guess here in this example, $1,000 is what's being made on the loan. It's going into the entity, but you know, at 6%, 500 of it is going back to the segregated account. If you're like Philip, you're making a little bit of a spread there. And then that money's going, well, got out of control there. That money's going back into the HELOC, paying and refilling that HELOC, or at least paying the interest on the HELOC. How many of you could make your car payment with $500 a month? Is anyone on here got a car payment that's $500 a month or less?
And one thing too is, because this is a line of credit, and let's say that person got done flipping the house, or it's been a year and you received your $100,000 back. What do you do with that money? You put it back into your HELOC, because why would you pay interest on something that you're not making money on until you find another deal? And therefore, then you lend it back out again, or that year comes back around and we will pay our annual premium deposit to the policy.
Yeah. So Morgan, like if you had the ability to do this, Morgan, like this $500 here would pay for your car payment. You know, Tass, you know, and Seth, same thing too. This $500 would pay your car payment, because there's $500 right here that hasn't gone anywhere. Remember, the 500 that's going back to the HELOC is just what the HELOC's charging you. You made 1,000. So you could go buy a car with your LLC for your business, and then you could pay for it with your LLC here. So there's all sorts of different things you could do here. I mean, it's basically just showing you a way to use the equity in your house a completely different way than you are now. And there's the model. So take a picture of that screen, and you can remember, this is the equity in your house. It goes into the policy. From the policy, we move that money out. Don't get confused. The segregated account is just a bank account. Like, find out where Philip's bank account is, because that's 3.85%. And then from there, it's just a pass through. You're taking the money. So if it was 100 starts in your HELOC, goes in here. Let's just pretend only 80,000 comes over here. The math will still work. So you put 100 in, but you can't take the full 100 in the first year. So you're crying. You're like, Chris, that's not how it works. You can't take it all. Great. So let's show you how you can. So 80 grand goes to your entity. So now what you did, when 80 grand went into your business bank account, you did a note. Now, if it's 6%, you can charge yourself anything you want. You're the bank. Charge yourself 6%. I'm just keeping it simple. Great. So that's a wash. Then you lend that 80 grand out through Private Money Club. Joe, can you give me here? We'll get the math on this, unless somebody wants to be a chap and tell me what 12% of 80,000 is. So we find a really good deal on there, or we go in with somebody else on a really good deal there. We find a 12% deal. What is that? 800 bucks.
Wow.
Okay. So 800 bucks a month is what it's going to be. So that 800 bucks a month goes from the private money, or the borrower on Private Money Club, back into your entity. It's a check every month. Now you don't need $800 to go back to your HELOC. Your HELOC's 500.
Yep.
Okay. So then you're just going to send 500 here. But seeing as though you saw Philip tell you what bank he's at, you're making 3.85. You know, the money's not going to stay in there long, so you're not going to make much, but it's better than nothing. You take the 500, you put it back into the HELOC.
300 stays here.
Yeah, and $300 stays here. So now maybe some of you can't make your car payment on 300, but that'll pay for dinners, that'll pay for vacations, that'll pay for your kids' college, or, well, maybe not your kids' college, but probably your kids' private school. That'll pay for diapers. That'll pay for your Starbucks habit. You see what I'm saying? And it doesn't matter what this is. If this was $100, it's $100 more than what you have today. That's the whole idea here.
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions. We can definitely hit some.
My goodness gracious. Joe, what did you just do here?
I don't know. Let's see.
Wow. All right. Well, I guess we got to start somewhere, Stephen.
I think
this is turning into another Ask Me Anything, isn't it?
Apparently, yeah. Questions I get a lot. Can I get a HELOC? Can I get a HELOC from my parents' house to start my bank?
The parents would have to get it. I mean, you'd have to be on the title of the deed, and 9 out of 10 times, it's a lot easier to get it on a house that you live in on a primary rather than a rental. But if they had income and you were on the title or the deed, you would just get a HELOC.
Let me take a stab at that one, Leo, because I did that. So my mom, okay, she's, I'm her only son. So my mother, what she wanted to do is she wanted to make sure that there was never any probate issues or anything with her house. So I was put on the deed of the house. So then me, and even though I was on the deed, me and mom went to the bank and we took out a home equity line of credit. I'm a signer and she's a signer. But the home equity line of credit, I use that money and I lend that money out. I've been doing this. This is the longest one I've ever been using, because I did this home equity line of credit with my mom the first time would have been before November 1994, when my mom put her house on the line so that I could open Fat Man board shops. But ever since that time, when I paid that line of credit back, we've always been using that. We've gone in and increased the line because mom's house has gone up. But that would be the way I would suggest doing it. You'd have to have your parents involved. They'd have to allow that. And my mom trusts me explicitly. She doesn't even ask anymore. I get a checkbook, for the home equity line. And if I do loans for mom's house, I just write a check for it. So that's a good way to do that.
If the house is deteriorated, can there still be equity in it, like just in the land or the destroyed house still?
Well, I don't know.
Probably not.
No,
I don't know any banks that would give you a home equity line of credit on a deteriorated house. There's no banks that I'm aware of that will lend on land, raw land. It's just not enough collateral for them to sink their teeth into. And if the house is destroyed, I mean, you'd be better off just wholesaling that house. Or, how is it destroyed? Maybe insurance. I don't know. But yeah, that wouldn't work.
I love these money loops, but how in the world do you keep track of it all without becoming a full-time job tracking it all?
How do you do it, Joe?
The money that comes in and out right out of the checkbook. I mean, when the interest comes in from the borrower, that goes back into the LLC bank account, and then the LLC will just write a check to myself to inside for the HELOC. Yeah.
So when you're wondering how do you track it, it's self-tracking as long as you use this segregated bank account, just like Joe said.
Yep.
This is a second bank account. Okay, think of this as books and records. That's all this is. Money goes in, and goes out. That's it. So now you've literally got full records. You got how much money came in from my policy, 80 grand. How much money came in each month, and just call it 500.
Yeah. And
then how much money went out. At the end of the year, the borrower should always send a 1099 out for the interest paid. So that's another way.
Yeah.
So
I just use my check.
That's the best way to do the tracking. I mean, mine's a little bit more involved. I got 3-ring binders where I track each and every single note for the lending I do. I actually have a full-time bookkeeper, but I mean, you'll evolve to that point. But in the beginning, how I did it is just paper.
Should start an LLC for lending purposes only. Right now, I've only lent money from personal accounts.
That's kind of a gray area for me. I wouldn't suggest going to an LLC if it's still not that much money. Depends. In the start, I mean, for protection purposes, I mean, it depends on how much money, I guess.
It just depends. I mean, a lot of my lending is not done through an LLC. It should be, and it will be in 2023, because I kind of got yelled at by my bookkeeper this year about doing it the way I am. She's like, you're killing yourself. Why don't you run this through the entity? And that way I can find write-offs against it, because I'm just paying taxes on all the income I'm getting on my loans. But for me, that's just how I've always done it. So for that person that was asking about records, like here's my records. This is just one. I've got tons of these. So like, here we go. Conco BizHub copy machine. Borrower. Oh, look at that. Money School. I don't know if you guys can see this. The borrower's Money School. Who's the lender? Yes, Mr. Chris Naugle from his policy. The effective date, the amount that I loaned was $8,234, which was the amount that the copy machine cost. My monthly payment, $193.40. First payment, balloon payment, and then heck, I mean, I didn't even. Sometimes, you know, dementia kicks in and you need to write down what your home address is, just so you forget. If you forget how to get home someday, you got it written down. I don't know why I did that. I think this is just habit.
Oh, let's see. When do you pay the policy back?
Well, every month. So all the loans I do, we pay them back monthly. I mean, you're the bank. Like, I'm the bank. If there's a month flip out couldn't pay that payment, then I don't know. I got to look in the mirror and say, hey, Mr. Bank, is it okay if we skip a couple months? And Mr. Bank in the mirror looks back and says, I guess, but let's not make this a habit. You are the bank. You set the rules. So you're not going into Bank of America and saying, I can't make my mortgage payment. Well, sir, we're going to ding your credit. We're going to take your house back in foreclosure. We're going to throw your kids on the street. No. You are the bank. So you set the terms.
Would it be wise to make additional payments toward the principal on the HELOC versus paying your self-interest within your policy? I know the ideal would be both, but as variable rates on HELOCs go up, that may become unreasonable.
That's a really good one.
But you're still making the interest from the borrower. The borrower is actually paying the interest. So if you wanted to put it into the principal of the HELOC, you can. But when Chris is done flipping that house,
yeah, that's the part we didn't get.
I'm going to get that $100,000 back. So I'm just making the interest spread for now until I get my principal back, and I can put it directly back into the HELOC until that annual payment comes through for the policy. Then I would take it and run it back through to the policy.
Yeah. So let's not forget, like that. Yeah. Could you take, you know, here we had that $1,000. Sorry, I'm just giving you the visuals that went into your entity. So $1,000 a month goes back into your entity. And then what we showed is 500 moving out, and that 500 going back to there. Could you take the full 1,000? Sure. You could take the full 1,000, have the 1,000 go into the segregated account and put the 1,000 over here. So now 500 goes to interest, the 500 goes to pay the principal down. But then when this deal pays off, okay, because whoever you lent this to is going to pay this deal off. They're going to sell it. They're going to refinance it. They're going to do something. Now you've got 100,000. So this deal's paid off. 100 grand is going to go back through. Sorry, I'm getting silly with that. So now you got 100 grand going back. Why would you pay principal back here? Because now you can't even put all this money. I guess it's one and the same, but you see what I'm saying? You wouldn't be able to put the full 100 back in, because if all you borrowed was 100 and every single month you were paying 500 back toward principal, now when you get the 100 back, that 100 is going to sit here, which isn't such a bad thing if you've got that account that Philip has where you're earning interest. But again, it just keeps it simple the way that we showed it.
Whatever makes more sense, you know, at the end of the day, you know, with the interest and how much money can actually be put back into the policy until you fill that up. But that should be pretty much borrowing it out to PMC anyway, and be making the spread on that too. So
Does the line of credit amount change as real estate declines in value, or is it locked into the line of credit agreement?
Great question.
Yep.
So great question, and a very real one for what's about to happen. So let's just use it this way, right? Here's your house. You got 100,000 in equity. So your house is worth 150. You take 100,000 out and you put it into TMM. If you started with $100,000 home equity line of credit, but you took 100,000 of that out and you put it into this policy, and all of a sudden the bank wants to reduce your $100,000 in equity, they want to take it down to 50. Can the bank send you a demand letter for the other 50 that they don't have? No. If the money's already in use, the bank is screwed in SOL. But if you didn't take the money and you didn't put it into the money multiplier, you got yourself 100,000. You're sitting there like, oh, one of these days I'm going to have a good deal come by PMC and I'm going to basically take that money. I don't like that whole life thing. Dave Ramsey said those whole life policies are garbage. So I'm not going to do that whole life thing that Joe and Chris are talking about. I'm just going to lend directly to PMC. Then Bank of America or any bank that you're going, I like picking on Wells Fargo because they love to be the first at this, says, hey, your house in San Francisco used to be worth 150. Whoever's from San Francisco is probably laughing. You're like, what kind of house did you buy in San Francisco for 150? A she shed, buddy. It's a she shed. But that $150,000 house is now only worth 100. So now all of a sudden we're only going to give you 80. If the money is sitting in the HELOC, can they take you from 100 down to 80? Yep. And all they're going to do is send you a letter just saying, F you. We are now reducing your line down to this. Now you only got 80. But if you play the shell game and you keep this money in motion, which is putting it into the policy that Dave Ramsey said not to, and then you do this, they can never take that money back because that money's in motion. But then you got to be really careful. Like when you do get that 100 back from over here. So let's say you lent 100 out. Now this deal closes and you want to put this 100 back into the HELOC. Maybe you just want to keep that 100 in that segregated bank account and just leave it sit there till you do the next deal until things get back on track.
All right. What kind of LLC business type should you have?
Let's just start with an LLC. Create a company. I guess maybe I don't understand.
Does the segregated account be held under C Corp, easy to bank as private bank?
You're talking about entity type. You got an LLC here. Okay, which means if you created an LLC or a C Corp, okay, it doesn't matter. And if it's an LLC, it can be an S Corp, okay, it could be filed as a subchapter S, or you could just open a C Corp. Doesn't matter. Forget about LLC here. Let's just call this an entity. C Corp, S Corp, LLC. Whatever this corporation is just the only thing that's going to change here is the note that you do is going to be from you over here. This is you, because this is your policy, to the C Corp, the S Corp, or the LLC. The bank account where the money goes into is going to be structured in whatever the corporate entity is, the C Corp, LLC, or S Corp. Now, where you're talking about the segregated account being a C Corp, that would only be if your policy was owned by the corporation, which would make it a COLI policy. Okay, because we can have a company own your policy, and then you can lend from your policy, which is owned by your company. And then this really wouldn't have to be a company checking account, but it could. This could just be the C Corp. So under that structure, you would eliminate all this.
I want to say something about the segregated account that I have a lot of people asking me about.
Okay.
What is the segregated account that you guys are talking about? When the insurance company takes out the ACH the very first day of your policy, it has to come out of your checking account or a credit card. So that checking account is nothing more than just a checking account that has your premium deposit in it. So when 30 days come and you have cash value in your policy and you want that back, it's going to come directly back to that same checking account that the first insurance company just took it out 30 days ago. So don't look into this too much about the segregated account. It's nothing more than a checking account that your money is in that goes back and forth to the insurance company. I mean, that's the way that I do it. That's the way that I have it set up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people overcomplicate the segregated account. The segregated account, this is just a second bank account. That's it. It's a second bank account. And you can have a segregated account for you personally, like we're showing. You could even have a segregated account for your business. So this could be your business seg account. You could call it your war chest like I do, or I call it a reserve account. I have lots of accounts, okay? Because how I do a lot of my stuff for tracking is just keep everything separate. So in your business, you have your main operating business checking account. So let's just say that. This is your main checking account. In a main business operating checking account, all your payroll's paid out of that. Everything's paid out of that. So if all the money from what you're doing with your banking goes into an operating account, there's a good chance that that money is going to get just kind of lost in the shuffle. I call it the black hole. So what we do is every month, we actually do it quarterly. My bookkeeper from our main entity bank account will move, and we set the changes. Usually it's between 10 and 15% every quarter. We will move from the main account into the segregated account. In my segregated account, one is called a war chest. It's literally on QuickBooks. That's what we call it, war chest. And the other is a reserve account. The reserve account is so that I never have to have that discussion with Shauna again. So Shauna looks at the bank account and the bank account doesn't have much. This bank account's got $100 and Shauna's owed $1,500 for payroll. She's like, whoa, Chris, how are we going to get paid? Shauna, did you look at that reserve account? That reserve account's got 50 grand. She's like, whew, oh, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, Shauna, remember the war chest that we set up? Yeah, that's got 200K in it. Well, what are you going to use that 200K for? I don't know. When everything falls apart and everything goes on sale, maybe then we'll start shopping to buy another company. Maybe another infinite banking company didn't quite make it. We'll buy them out. Maybe, who knows? I'll buy an RIA. Maybe I'll buy your company. You never can tell. But all we do is just every quarter or every month, we take a percentage of profits and we move it into these accounts. And, you know, the reserve account is just a set amount that I'd like to feel comfortable with. The war chest, that's right now 10 to 15% of net profits moved into the war chest every quarter. How I do mine is not how you're going to do yours. You can set yours up any which way you want. But again, don't get hung up in this segregated account. It's just a second bank account or a third bank account. You can have 15 bank accounts if you wanted. That'd be excessive, but well, that's about what I got. You know, I just like keeping things separate. For my properties, like when I was doing real estate, every property had its own bank account. Every property. Joe walked through my door one day and I had a deal. And I don't remember how he heard about it. And I got telling him about the deal and he's like, oh yeah, I'll lend on this. And I can't even count on both hands how many times I've heard people say that. And then they leave and then you never hear from them again. Joe, I'm in a meeting, shows back up out of nowhere with a check for the, I don't remember what it was, two and a quarter for $225,000. He said, I'm here. And I'm sitting in a meeting with somebody and I'm like, excuse me, ma'am, can you hold on a second? And I went out there and Joe lent on the deal. So, but the thing that I did with the reason for that story is when I when I did that loan with Joe, I opened a separate bank account. I didn't deposit that $225,000 in the main operating account of LC Strategic Realty. I set up a separate bank account that was set up with the subtitle name was the address of that property. What was that property? Jefferson. Oh, Jefferson. One Thomas Jefferson. So the subtitle of that bank account was One Thomas Jefferson, $225,000 in there. So when Joe said, hey, Chris, you know, like, everything good? I say, yeah, Joe, here's the bank statement. Like, that's powerful.
And two, that was before the policy, and that was before the LLC. So that check came directly from the HELOC directly to you.
Yep.
See, so I mean, you don't necessarily need an LLC right from the get-go. You don't need, don't need the policy, but guess what? Now I'm making a lot more running it from the HELOC through the policy and then to Chris. So that works that way.
Absolutely.
What's the process of finding a trustworthy borrower? Obviously, good credit score is an important indicator, but is there a special screening process you'd recommend? And how do you advertise being a new lender? My husband and I just started our new IBC through the Money Multiplier, so we are very new at this. Thank you.
Yeah, check out privatemoneyclub.com. So on there, there's a whole bunch of education. We do a training every single month. Matter of fact, this month, next week, I think, right, Stephen? Next
Thursday.
week?
Thursday.
Next Thursday. We're doing a 2-hour group training for the Private Money Club and the MSTV members. And we're literally bringing a coach, a private lending coach, who's going to be part of Private Money Club in to teach exactly what you just said. How do you structure deals? How do you protect yourself? How do you do due diligence? Inside Private Money Club, there's also a software, an underwriting software that you have access to use up to 3 times for free called House Folios. That's another way you can do it. But I mean, basically, to get in the game, you just got to start learning and talking to other people that are. We do trainings on this twice a week. Well, no, I'm sorry, not twice a week. Once a week, Money Club Monday. So Private Money Club members can go to Money Club Monday. Stephen teaches it every single Monday, and it's all this stuff. Every once in a while, this wealth webinar, we talk about private lending, but usually we do that on Money Club Monday. And then once a month, we do a 2-hour group coaching where we dive just into things like that. So that would be the best answer. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I know you're spot on. I mean, your options are go to, networking groups and re-ups and stuff like that and deal with all the hard money people and trying to find the new investors and people that want your money and compete that way, or just go in Private Money Club and it's pretty much done for you, everything right there. So that's by far the easiest way, especially if you're new.
And another thing too, there's a lot of people that want a little bit more hand-holding when it comes to private lending or, being a good borrower or a good lender. That's coming soon. We're developing a coaching and certification program that will basically tie into private money club. So there'll be certified lenders and certified borrowers on different levels inside private money club. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We got to get that approved by legal first. And then after that, you'll be able to, take part in one of those certification or mentorship programs. And that would definitely be the cat's meow. Is that how they say that? Cat's meow?
That's correct.
Yeah.
This was asked 30 minutes ago, so we might have already hit this as we were going through it, but never got the logic of a HELOC. I created two debts, HELOC and insurance. One is 6%, the other 5% for 11% liability total. Have one revenue stream at 12%. So technically I'm making 1%. What am I missing?
Never gotten the logic of a HELOC. Create two debts, the home equity line of credit and the insurance company one. So the insurance company loan is just an advance of your death benefit. I wouldn't really call that a liability because it's a loan that you don't have to pay back. When you die, that loan gets paid back.
But you're making more in interest and dividends.
Yeah, and you're making a spread on that. So if you followed any of the stuff where we teach you how that spread works, and we've shown it by the numbers. So that's that part. So I think you're just 6%. You're looking at it in a one-sided approach. I don't know how else to put it.
And the 6% from the HELOC, you're still making 12, so that's still 6%.
Mm-hmm.
So
I understand what he's saying. He's saying, you got one revenue stream of 12, but you got two loans. But he's calling the insurance company loan a liability, which I guess it kind of is. It's a liability against your death benefit. That's for sure. And, but as long as that money's moving, and hey, listen, like you're not taking that loan and putting it in Wall Street, the money can vanish. You're going to have security behind it. You're going to have if I lend, I'm always in first secured position. So worst case scenario, deal goes south. I still got the property. Now, yes, will it be a pain in the ass? I've never had one go that far south. I've had deals where the person stopped paying and I've had to, kind of have attorneys send letters, but I've always gotten my money back. So I guess, Jim, what's your alternative? Let me ask you that. So I understand your point. What else is your alternative? What are you going to do? You could do nothing. You can just leave the money in your house in the rafters, sleep good at night, not have any liabilities, not have anything to worry about, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, that's an alternative. I mean, hey, to each their own. But other than that, I mean, where are you going to put money to make it work right now? I don't think Wall Street's a good place for you to look. There's just not a lot of good options right now. Being the bank is the ultimate at this present point. I don't even think at this present point. I think always. There's different things that are hot and cold from time to time, but right now is a great time to be in this business, a great time. And if you follow some simple rules, that risk that you're worried about, that liability, as you call it, can be mitigated very, very precisely, just like a bank mitigates their risk. Is there a risk? Yes, there's always going to be a risk. So, Jim, to your question, my question back to you is, well, then what are your alternatives? What are your suggestions that you would do if you don't like this, or it's not even that you don't like, you just don't understand the logic, which I understand. What's your alternative, for you to do something? That would be my question back to you on that.
Yeah, it looks like the Fed, looks like Powell is basically saying they're going to continue to jack rates, and the market fell about 350 points from where its high was today.
How much did he increase rates?
0.5 point.
Okay.
But
of course he's going to keep raising rates, man. The target is 2. We're at 7.1. What do you think they're going to do? No question about BYOB. The question is creating the additional cost of the HELOC. Yeah, no, Jim, I know who you are. I see your name all the time. So I know you got policies, but the cost of the HELOC. So the cost of the HELOC only comes, and this is a good question. I don't mean to go to comments, but I'm a visual person. So the cost of the HELOC is only going to be a cost if you actually use the HELOC for this. You would never do this if you didn't plan to have the money work over here. So if you could, like I showed you, just do from HELOC to lending, from lending back to HELOC. Now, all of a sudden, you eliminate the policy need. Now, I know you have policies, though. So that's the thing. So I understand when you take the money from the HELOC and you put it in here, you got that 6% counting. That interest that the HELOC is going to charge. That money's ticking. So you've definitely got to have somewhere for that money to go pretty quickly here. Don't just take the HELOC and fund the policy and be like, all right, that's cool, and then just sit back and do nothing. It's going to start costing you money. But if you put it to work, that's what we're talking about. And also too, Jim, for you, like some of your policies are older and more mature. You could basically blend your policies, the 3 you have, with the new one funded by your HELOC. And now all of a sudden you've got a better rate of return because some of your policies are more mature than others. But I get your logic, what you're saying. I really do. This isn't for everybody. Again, the question I always come back to is what other alternatives are there for your equity in your house?
Look, I want to touch base on that too. So in the beginning, when people are starting up their policies, they might have more money in their equity in their house than they do with their policy. I mean, if you're starting off with a, $1,000 a month, $12,000 policy, you might have $50,000 or $70,000 in equity. So at that point in time, it would be beneficial to use the HELOC money, running it through the policy, just so you can make more PMC with interest. But after 4, 5, 7 years and keep on putting this $12,000 in, well, that HELOC might be less money than your policies. So maybe you wouldn't want to use the HELOC anymore and then just go right to the policies.
Yeah. And also too, you know, like to everybody that's on here, this isn't a strategy that works for everybody.
Yeah.
This is what Joe does. This is what he knows. I don't do this. Okay. I lend direct from the HELOCs. So I'm not liking this. I probably should do this. It's just, I just hadn't gotten there yet. So this might be a great strategy for some of you that have not like gotten your equity to work. And you're thinking about, oh, well, what do I do with this home equity line? This is a great sound strategy that will work. But for some of you, this might not be it. And that's the beauty. You know, each one of these trainings covers a different topic that's going to apply to some and maybe not all, but you're at least learning something new. And I love Mark's question here. What is the pros and cons of doing capital contributions to your LLC instead of a loan to your LLC? So it's a great one. And I've done both. A loan to your LLC gives you immediate basis that you can then pay back. So does a capital contribution. So the loan gives you the ability to charge interest to your company. The capital contribution does not. Both of them kind of the loan has to be paid back, but the contribution just gives you basis, and you can take basis out without paying tax. You can also pay a loan back without paying tax, but the loan gives you the ability to charge the interest on it. That would be the best way to answer that one.
Can you do this if you already have a mortgage? Do you switch?
2 things. So depending on what your interest rate is, depending on how much the equity is, depending on if we're going to do a debt consolidation with doing credit cards or maybe incorporating a car loan inside of the whole package, we can incorporate the mortgage, the house, or the mortgage, the car, and the credit cards inside of one consolidation, and then run the leftover through the policy to the PMC. And now if there's enough interest coming back from the private money club to cover the entire HELOC bill, now your W-2 could go directly towards the bad debt. And that's the difference between a bad debt and a good debt. The equity inside of the house that would be lent out to PMC would be good debt. We're still paying interest on it, but it's differently than bad debt, considered bad debt, because now we want to get that bad debt gone. It's like a teeter-totter. As the bad debt goes down, the good debt goes out. So now we can lend more money to make more money to get rid of the bad debt. Who wants to have debt? I want to have all the good debt possible.
All right.
How do you avoid MEC when putting funds into a policy?
You can answer this one. How do you do that?
Let us do it for you. This is what we do all day, every day. We design these policies. We build them. You'll never MEC. We'll set it up however you want. We'll design it for whatever amount you want, pretty much. You can put a bunch of money in the first year, less annually moving forward, whatever you want to do. Just schedule a call with us and we will take care of you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you try to do this, maybe you're an agent yourself or an advisor and you try to do this, I mean, good luck. I had a Mass Mutual agent call me yesterday. He's somebody that did a policy with us, and he's trying to do this at Mass Mutual, and he can't get anyone in Mass Mutual that knows how to do this. He's gone to his consultants. He's gone to his GA. They all tell him, like, you can't do this. It will MEC. We cannot build a policy this way. And he's like, but I know you can. I have 2 of them. So he's literally quitting. He's resigning. He might actually be on here. He's resigning from Mass Mutual and joining us because he's just like, that's a crock of shit. And I'm like, dude, I told you this. I was in that world and they told me the same thing. And I didn't believe it was possible either until I saw that it was possible. You just got to come over to the dark side, or maybe it's the light side, depending on how you look at it.
It seems like you're skipping the repayment of the IBC if the repayment goes from the segregated account straight to the HELOC. Well,
you are. You're not paying the policy back in that case.
No.
But you could take that amount, remember that we were just spitballing that extra funds. You could use the extra funds that weren't sent back to the HELOC to pay off the loan with the insurance company, or when the policy pays off, or I'm sorry, when the house pays off, you could take some of that and pay the, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. You could take the spread and pay it back to the policy and just rinse and repeat. I know I said, would that pay for your car and stuff, but I was just trying to show different uses.
Sometimes when I explain it to people, when I'm on the phone with them, like in your example for the copier, you take money out of your policy to pay the copier, because now that interest rate, you're going to pay yourself back and you're going to recoup because it's an entity. It's something that you purchased, like a car. You're buying the car and you're paying yourself back. In regards to when we're doing this with lending, so that money that's out, we're always making a spread on it. So if you're borrowing it from the insurance company at 5%, but making 12 on it, that deal is going to come back. At that point in time, you can put that money and repay the policy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to repay it because it's not an entity, a single entity that you just purchased.
Yeah, the reason we show the HELOC first is because if you don't pay the HELOC, you're going to have trouble. If you don't pay the loan back to your policy, nobody's asking, nobody's caring. Yes, they're charging you interest, but remember, you're also making more interest than what they're charging you.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a wash. But I will tell you, just from practice, I always pay my loans back. Every loan I take out, and I just did this the other day, Security Mutual. It's one of my older IBC policies. I got a bill in the mail for the interest. It was $2,041. I paid the interest, and I realized that I took that loan out a long time ago, and I lent it to Chris Root on a real estate deal. I think it was like $40,000 bucks. And Chris Root had long paid that policy or that deal back. So I got the 40 grand, and I probably paid the 40 grand down in another policy loan, forgetting that one came from Security Mutual. Listen, sometimes when you get 9 of these things, it gets a bit hairy from time to time, but really, if you just look at all your different policies as being a banking system. So here's what I did. I just did it yesterday, and I could actually show you the sheet. So what I did is I went to bankrate.com. I put 40 grand in. I put, I don't remember what interest rate. I think it did 6%. And I figured out the monthly payment. I then called Security Mutual and I said, can you send me a loan repayment form? They emailed it. I filled it out. I sent a voided check. I told them what the monthly payment was. I just mailed it back into Security Mutual. So now I'll be repaying that loan back at a rate of, whatever it was. I never, ever, ever steal from my bank. Do things get sometimes misplaced? A loan closes out, I get a proceeds, and I just pay it back to a policy that has an open loan and it wasn't supposed to be that one. Yeah, but that's why I try to do a good job by writing down in these which policy it comes from. Now, let me show you one extra thing. And I promise, folks, we're going to do our best to get to all these questions. If we miss someone's questions, so right here, this is the note. I don't know if you guys can see that, but this is the note from that Conca, which is the copy machine, the BizHub copy machine. 8,234 and so this one, I know the loan came from my cash value line of credit because it says CV LOC banking policy loan. So when this thing gets paid back, it pays back to that line of credit. But this flip out one, remember 7,000 was from one New York Life policy, 14,000 was from another. But I've since done a CV line of credit on those New York Life policies. So each one of these loans is going to be a little bit different in how they're paid back. That's why I like the CV line of credit. We don't talk about it anymore because they're like 6.5% now. And with interest rates going up, the CV lines of credit are charging you more interest. So we're just not talking about them, but I still use mine.
Dexter said, can you explain when you say the feds are trying to when the rates have come up to 7%? Dexter, maybe write that again. I don't fully understand it, but the Fed's goal with inflation, one of their mandates, like why they exist, is to try and control jobs and control inflation. And to them, their goal for inflation is 2%. With rates still at, inflation at 7.1%, they need to get inflation down to 2%. So they do that by raising rates, which slows the flow of money and cools everything off, which in turn should slow down inflation, which gets it to the 2% goal. Essentially, I'm not sure if that's what he's asking. Todd said, is it a bad idea to just do a cash out refi to fund an IBC policy, then take policy loans versus the HELOC method? Basically, cash out refi versus HELOC.
Well, that's the difference between the amortization and the simple interest.
So that's exactly what we were talking about here when we talked about the HELOC versus the home equity loan. If you're going to do a cash out refi, I wouldn't suggest doing a cash out mortgage, like a refi on your mortgage. Joe was talking about, do a home equity loan, which is going to act like a home equity line of credit, except for it's a home equity loan. It's like a mortgage, but it operates like a HELOC, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't disagree with that, Todd.
You keep the mortgage, and then you'll get the full 50,000 right away instead of just a line that you can use 20,000 or 30,000 on at a time. You might not want the full 50,000, but then you're going to have to pay that back on a monthly basis with amortization, just like your mortgage. So if you have a mortgage payment of 1,000 and then equity of 50,000, and then that's 500, now you have a 1,500 back. and you get that full $50,000 right away. With a line of credit, you might not need all 50. You might only need 25. So you're going to pay interest on only 25 instead of the entire 50.
Yeah. And Todd, one thing, I just put Joe's contact info. So right there is Joe's email, Joe's calendar. And then this is the company that he can get home equity lines through or home equity loan agreements through. So book a call with Joe and he can explain that a little bit more. And Todd, it's a mathematical equation. Just run the math, and Joe's very good at doing that.
BRISC with Egypt and Turkey joining, how will that affect the US dollar? And then also financing HELOC and PMC and whole life insurance policies. So BRISC, which is the Brazil, Russia, what is it? Saudi?
From Donald.
Well, with Egypt and Turkey joining, how will this affect the US dollar and financing HELOCs and PMC and whole life policies?
I don't have an answer. I don't know enough about it. I mean, if the US dollar weakens, it doesn't change anything because that's the only means of exchange we have in the US. And even though the US dollar is likely to weaken into the coming years, it's still the best currency that there is until there's a better one. In this country, if you live in the United States of America, you're SOL. It doesn't matter. You can't use any other currency. So if the dollar weakens and your policies are, valued in US dollars and your loans are valued in US dollars, it's business as usual. It really is moot point. I get what you're saying, but it just doesn't really make any difference.
Correct.
Don't overcomplicate it. Just always remember there's a couple simple equations. Like number one, this is just one strategy of many. There's a ton of different ways you can use your policies, a ton of different ways you can use your home equity lines of credit. You just don't want to use them the wrong way. Don't take a home equity line of credit and go put a pool in your backyard. Although it's fun in the summer, you got to pay for that someday. And the pool, last time I checked, isn't writing you a check. Your pool write you a check?
Nope.
Steven, your pool writing you a check? Actually, it takes a check every month to operate that thing, doesn't it? So we want to try to make money work for us instead of just working for money and then using that money to enjoy life. And then eventually someday we can't enjoy life anymore because we can't pay for it. We want to take our money and make it go to work for us. Everything we just showed you is just a different way to make your money work for you. The way Joseph does it is his money's working for him twice. It's working for him in the policy. He's making a spread, and then it's working for him in the private loans that he does. Okay, so he's making money twice, where the average person's making money once. And kind of like what Jim was saying, like he can't make logical sense of it. I totally get it. Like maybe for Jim, because he's already got 3 policies, he lends from his policies, and then from his home equity line, he just lends directly like I do, because that's what I do. I lend direct from my home equity line of credit. I don't take my home equity and put it into the policy and then lend from the policy. To each their own, there's just a different strategy. And logically, each of you will have to make that decision, what makes the most sense, which is why very early on, I asked all of you who had equity. Then I asked who's actually making that money work for them. And some people said, I will be soon, I'm not yet. Those are the people that this might be a really good strategy for. Because if somebody's got a home equity line and that money's already out working, well, this is moot point. It's kind of like the ship has sailed because your money's already working. When it comes back from that loan that you lent out on, maybe then you could do it. Each year, almost every year, like clockwork, I'm opening another policy. And I'm doing that not because I'm trying to win the race against Brent. I've already lost that race. He's got 24 policies, adds one every year. Devin, I think, is trying to race me. I'm just saying, no disrespect, but Devin's got 9 policies. I've got 9. Okay, so I'm not trying to get more policies. I'm just trying to get the ability to put more money through my banking system. As I make more, I need the capacity to hold more. So I get a lot of questions. Steven, I know you get them and I know you do. People are like, well, should I do one or should I do a couple policies? The answer is always one. Unless it's like you and your spouse and you're equal, breadwinners, maybe then you split it. Like I've got a case right now where the husband and the wife both work in the business. They're both making money. So there's a risk there. If either one of them were to pass away, we're going to need some money to support their income. So in that case, now you should do 2 versus 1, but that's the only differentiating factor. Outside of that, there's no race to have more than one policy. If I could just have one that held all the money I want to put in, I'd just have one. But over time that I've been doing this, I've had to expand and add policies. You saw back in 2019, those were the 2 New York Life policies, plus I had Security Mutual, and I believe I had a One America back then too. But I've been adding on ever since then. And each time I add a policy, it gives me the ability to put more money through the system. And that's more money that goes into the system is more money I get to move out of the system into loans for copy machines, into loans for buying my G-Wagon or my wife's GLS. I mean, whatever floats your boat. But like everything in your life eventually is done from your banking system. The worst thing about what we do is it's so freaking cool that you want to literally just go from year 1 to year 10 and like all of a sudden now you're doing everything, but it takes time. So the worst part about this is starting, is the first policy, because you're just getting started. You're just learning this stuff. You're just starting to put money in. And for many of you, that amount that you can put into the first policy might not be as much as you want to, but it's all you can do. Don't overextend. We've had a lot of people do that. They overextend, they overcommit the amount that they can save in their policies. And then all of a sudden, 6 months down the line, we're getting a call, hey, can I reduce that premium? The answer is yes, we can, but you're going to jeopardize the amount of money you're going to have. The amount we showed you and the amount we modeled for you isn't going to be the amount you're going to have if you can't save that. So I always tell people, your first policy, your second or third, don't overstretch, especially right now. Things are changing, as Bob Dylan says. Some people are going to lose jobs. Some people are going to get laid off. Some people are going to see their business make a little less into this next economic cycle. Plan for that with your policy. If you're just getting started and you want to start a policy, book a call with Stephen, book a call with Joseph, like get going. But maybe your first policy is a smaller policy just to get your feet wet. You don't have to go for the gusto on the first one. I mean, I have 9. My first one was, I think, $230 a month. Think about that. My very first whole life policy I built was $230 a month. You think that thing does much? Most of you are like, oh, that thing couldn't have much. That thing's got like 50 grand in it now, but it's been a long time. So even small policies over time have a lot of money or have decent amounts of money, and you just build on from that. So I'm just trying to set the expectations that don't overextend yourself right now. Be careful. If you've got equity in your house, get that money working for you. I promise you, things will change. You won't have as much available in a year or 6 months from now. You might not have any available. I'm telling you, banks will freeze lines of credit. Mark my word. Just remember back to the pandemic. Wells Fargo, right at the top of the news, CNBC, Wells Fargo freezes home equity lines of credit, period. End of story. 2009, the same thing happened, and it will happen again. You just got to get ready for it. And a bank can't freeze a line of credit that's out there working for you. You could just flip the bank off and be like, hey, sorry, man, you gave me the money and I made it go to work for me. You guys do the same thing with my money. I just copied what you do. All right, folks. So I hope you all learned something. I hope it's a new strategy that you can consider or actually start applying right away.
All right, I'll do one other thing for them. I'm going to put in the chat box. There's a company we've been working with for a few years now called Quantum RE that does home equity agreement loans. So it's a little different than a HELOC where you don't have repayment. It's just so an alternative to what Joe has and what a HELOC is. Just wanted to throw that out there too, if anybody's looking to explore other options for tapping into equity.
Yeah, if you don't qualify for a conventional, HELOC through a regular bank, that's a good avenue to explore. I've actually sent a couple people there.
Just the other day, actually, a guy close to me, he makes a lot of money, but all of his money is cash. I'm not going to tell you what he does, but it's all cash. Okay. So he can't get a traditional home equity line of credit, but he's got like $1 million in equity in his house in California. So I sent him over to talk to Matt at Quantum RE. They don't care that he doesn't have income. They don't care what his credit score is. What they're going to do is they're going to give him some of his equity in his house. Like, here you go, here's your equity. And then they do an agreement, or in 10 years, they're going to share an upside potential of his house. So if his house goes from $1 million to $1.1 million, what they're going to share in is that $100,000 in appreciation. Whenever he decides to sell the house, refinance the house or whatever, they're going to get a percentage of that. So let's say it goes up. Let's say they give him 350 grand, and I'm just using numbers, making them up. They give him 350 grand of the $1 million that he has. That 350 needs to be repaid in 10 years. Okay. But the house appreciates $100,000. Let's just assume. Okay. They're going to take a percentage of that. Let's say it's 30% of that 100. So now they're going to get 30 plus their 350 back. He still has the house. He still keeps the house. He still made part of that appreciation, and he got to use 350 grand each year. If he lent that money out at, let's just say 15%, like some of the private, that's 50 grand a year, I think, whatever,
12,000,
something like that.
Close.
But, it's just another option. And, you know, it's one that maybe you guys can use. If the house depreciates, well, Quantum RE shares in that they can't get any of that money, because if the house depreciates, they don't share in any of the upside because there is no upside. They don't make you pay part of the depreciation. They can't. So that's the cool part. They only share in the upside. If there's no depreciation, well, in 10 years, they just want their $350 back. That's it. Sucks for them in that case. Sucks to be you, Quantum. But, you know, that's the business they're in. They understand the risk that they're in. Yeah. So right here, Freddie said Quantum is awesome. So there's somebody that's using it. So maybe reach out to Freddie and see how they were with him. All right. Well, with that being said, folks, this afternoon, 4:30 Eastern, we're going to be doing an Ask Me Anything. Are you going to stick around for that? Yeah. So we're doing an Ask Me Anything. So if we didn't get your questions now, join us for the Ask Me Anything. We'll answer any question. We'll have a lot of fun, and we'll just do whatever you guys want us to do and answer whatever you want us to answer. Until then, we will see you all later. Thanks for joining us. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We're putting up tons of them, but I think if you like this one, you'll probably like that video as well. Not only that, I've got a book that I created, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, where we actually show you what the wealthy do in the game they play with money. I want you to have that for free. And if you want to know about all my new videos coming up, click that alert button. Actually, smash that alert button, and you'll be notified every time we put a new video. So we'll see you on the next episode.